Mr. Adit Man presents Reddit. I was approached by the exact same scammer, 2 years apart, in 2 different cities on 2 different continents. Anyone else have a tale of crazy coincidence? Not really as crazy as the others ones here, but since we're sharing ... When I was kid I awoke one morning with a really stiff neck. I mean stiff to the point where I could not stand up. Naturally this sent my poor mom into a panic and she called 911. Laid there for a few minutes until the paramedics arrived. They stabilized me with a C-spine, put me on a backboard, and prepared to transport me, etc. Being 5 years old I naturally found this entire process extremely frightening and could not stop crying. The paramedic calmed me down like a boss. He took a spare rubber glove, blew into it like a balloon, tied off the end, and drew some eyes on it. "Hey little guy, check out this chicken I made." I went from crying to laughing and refused to let that chicken glove go. In fact I kept that thing 4 years after. Flash forward to my mid-20s. At present day, I moved to the next county over, which is about 60 miles east, and I joined my local fire department. During my first structure fire I end up second back on the line, referred to as anchoring, to a firefighter who had just transferred into our department from another department in my former county. Being that as experienced, he was allowed on the front of the line. The knob. Despite the fact I did not even get to properly introduce myself yet. All goes well. We knock the fire down, get all the occupants out, all that good stuff. Afterwards we shake hands, have a good laugh at our informal introduction, and go about what's left to do. I notice the homie Arwana's kid was sitting on the back step of the ambulance crying his eyes out. Who could blame him? No kid would really grasp a concept. What's important is that they're okay when all his favorite stuff is gone in one swoop. Suddenly the image of that paramedic pops into my head, and I figure if it helped me smile it'd make this little guy smile too. I ask one of the EMTs for a spare glove, blow it up, grab one of their pens, and make a rubber chicken. The kid stops crying, grabs the glove from me, and starts smiling. Mission accomplished. I turn around and see the guy who was on the hotter line in front of me staring at me smiling. "That's funny you did that. When I was a paramedic in another county I always used to do that to calm kids down. Works like a charm, right?" I laughed for a minute then thought about it. "Hey, you did not happen to work around my town during the late 80s did ya?" "Yeah, I did." "Why?" he asked. Long story short, it was the same paramedic who made the rubber chicken glove for me as a kid. And I finally got to tell him how much that meant to me. And also show him how I used it some 18 years later to calm another little guy down. Small world. 1997. Boy Scout National Jamboree. Fort App Hill, Virginia. One of the best times of my adolescence, if not my life. 2 weeks of touring all over the area. Get to meet the vice president. Lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Touch the X-15. See Gettysburg. etc etc. Flying high on endorphins. Feeling great. During the actual event, I sit down next to some guys wearing funny uniforms. We start talking patches. Patch trading has an irreligious culture around it in Boy Scouts. And I notice that the 3 of them have Scottish accents. Awesome. I tell them that my grandpa is from Scotland and am slightly better than 50% Scottish by blood. Start talking ancestries. One of the guys has the same last name as me. Cosmic coincidence. Then he gets a weird look on his face and asks me what my grandpa's name is. Me. Richard. Richard Cameron. Scott. Does he happen to have a brother named Sean? Me. Yeah. Still lives ... in ... Scotland ... Scott. I think him your cousin. We both immediately go find payphones to call respective family, where it's confirmed. We laugh for a long time and spend the rest of the event hanging out. I still communicate with him and his wife. And one day I'll get the money together to go to Scotland and see him and the rest of my family. To sum it up, I travel 3,000 miles. Another guy travels 3,500 miles. We meet by chance and turn out to be closely related. I have an identical twin brother. People ask us all the time if we had a secret twin language or if we can read each other's thoughts. I have gotten it so much at this point that it really does not bother me at all. I usually tell them this story because it satisfies that weird twin connection that most people exaggerate. My buddies and I took a road trip during college down to New York to visit friends, see a football game, and engage in general shenanigans. We decided to leave at around 5 PM on Sunday and still hungover from the exhausting past 48 hours we made our way to my beat up Toyota Land Cruiser. I cannot explain the horror and the immediate drop in my stomach when my key broke off in the car door lock. Has this ever happened in the history of ever? I had no clue what to do. There were no automatic locks to the car, so we were locked outside in the cold with no apparent way to get in the car and drive home. Feeling completely clueless, I called my dad and told him the situation. My dad was confused by my story, and even though I thought I explained what happened well, he just did not get it. Finally, he says, "Very funny maximum," and hangs up on me. So now I'm the one who's confused. I call back and I say, "Dad, I really need your help, what do I do?" And my dad pauses for about 20 seconds and says, "Wait. Holy malarkey, you're serious right now?" Apparently my twin brother had called him half an hour earlier with the exact same problem. He had broken his key off in the car door of his vehicle and was having trouble getting back to school. Back around 98, 99, I was playing cribbage on Yahoo one night against random people. Started chatting with an opponent in Hong Kong. When I mentioned where I was in the US, she said her brother went to college in my town and she had visited him a few times. Me, no way. I grew up in that neighborhood. Her, no way. Did you ever to go that little bar? Me, yes. We lived on that same block. Her, were you near that one house with the basketball court in the backyard? My brother and his friends thought it was the coolest. Me, stunned, that was my house. Welcome to the internet, everyone. I have picked up the same guy, hitchhiking, in 5 different states over the span of 10 years. First time was TN, then MO, TX, LA, and lastly in Iowa. A long time ago, my ex-fiancée cheated on me with her coworker, John. I never met, and I have no idea what he looks like. I eventually got a job in advertising and ended up working with a girl, Jen, who had actually worked with my ex at her old job. One day Jen and I are walking around Toronto. I owned a shirt from an online store that had a picture of a dinosaur, and under it said "Never forget." While we were walking, I noticed a guy walking towards us on the other side of the street, wearing the shirt I owned. Jen never would have seen him, and I pointed at him. Jen turned white. Jen, having worked with my ex-fiancé, also knew who John was. The guy on the other side of the street was John, the guy who ducked my ex, and was wearing the same dinosaur shirt I own. I just happened to be walking with the only person I know who could actually identify the guy who ducked my ex, and it was me who pointed him out in a crowd because we owned the same shirt. I had to sit down and really think about the universe after that. About 4 years ago, I was walking on 5th Avenue from 42nd to 40th Street in New York City, right in front of the NYPL, where they filmed Spider-Man. I had my headphones on as I usually do, and I was walking fast and mostly looking down when I knocked into someone and knocked him over. I felt so bad and like a real dick, so I helped him up, apologizing profusely. So he was a little upset, and it turns out his glasses fell off and broke, so he wanted me to pay him for them. That's when I got suspicious. He was the one who first raised the notion that I should pay for them. Had he not said anything, I would have probably offered to pay him for them myself. But he asked first, and I believe he asked for $40, which to me seemed like a really cheap price for a pair of glasses. So I figured out he was a scammer right away. So I told him that I did not have any cash on me and asked him to walk with me to the ATM at Grand Central, a few blocks away. This scared him a lot. He got really nervous and muttered he was in a hurry and asked if I could give him some money right then and there. At this point, I asked him for some identification and promised to send him the money, which completely spooked him, and he walked off real fast. A year later in New York City, I was walking to the same bus stop on 40th and 5th, this time coming from the direction of Madison Square Garden, when the same guy bumped into me again. So we were only a few blocks from where he first tried it. I recognized him right away, but unlike a year earlier when I was walking down a very crowded 5th Avenue, I remember clearly that the second place where he tried this was not crowded at all. So he clearly was a scammer. I would have been suspicious even if I had not run into him earlier. Pun intended. I'll let him go through with this little speech again this time, though I was smirking the whole time. And when he finally came to the part about needing money to replace his glasses, I calmly told him, "You have already tried this before on me, remember?" He gave me a blank look, said "Oh," and walked away. To this day I regret not messing with him the second time around. When I was between the ages of 8, 12, my family and I would go on a week-long camping trip every summer. Now that I think back, it was hardly camping, as the campground had a pool, mini golf course, arcade, in a giant old barn, and lots of touristy wilderness type stuff. On each of these camping excursions, my brother and I would eventually meet some girls also staying there. This happened every year, and as a boy entering puberty, I looked forward to this week-long girl chasing, hormone-filled extravaganza. Most years the girls would come and go. This was before cell phones/internet, so there was really no way to keep in touch after they left. However, on the last year we went, the girl I met was absolutely perfect. Her name was Erin, and she had the most gorgeous flowing blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Erin and I clicked perfectly, and it was one of the best times of my life. We caught frogs, went hiking and canoeing, and spent nights lying in each other's arms in a big field gazing at the stars. Sadly, she had to leave. I remember giving her one last hug in the arcade before she climbed into her parents' Jeep and they drove away, never to be seen again. Skip ahead 4 years to when I was 16. I had just gotten my license and was enjoying the high school life. My friends invited me out to a party in a nearby town that night. I was somewhat reluctant at first because this meant I would have to drive there and back, which means I could not drink anything. After some prodding I gave in and we left that night. The party was on a farm in a big old barn, much like the one which housed the arcade at the campground. It was your typical high school party, kids getting drunk off a couple beers, people making out, etc. I decided to head outside to smoke. I had been out there for a couple minutes when a girl asked me if I had a light. It was very dark that night and I could not see her very well, but her voice brought upon a feeling of déjà vu. We started talking a bit, and the feeling of déjà vu kept getting stronger and stronger. As we started to walk back inside, I asked what her name was. Erin, she said. My jaw hit the ground as I realized that this was the same girl from the campground. I asked her if she ever went to the campground as a kid, and immediately her eyes lit up as she connected the dots herself. We ended up dating for a couple years until we both had to leave for different universities. Hers being on the other side of the country. We still keep in touch and always talk about going back to that campground for one last night of lying under the stars. I have 2 decent stories. 1. I had the same cab driver on 2 separate days on vacation in New York City, once from the airport to Lower Manhattan and once near Central Park. 2. I was on a trip to Greece and one of my friends picked up a girl at a bar early in the night, took her to his apartment, made sweet love, then went their separate ways. My friend was sharing his apt with 7 others, so he was sleeping on a twin bed with another twin pull-out below it on the floor. He woke up the following morning up to find his roommate with the same girl asleep 2 feet away. Picked up the same girl at 2 different bars on the same night. In my senior year of high school, I did a trip on my own to Germany for a few weeks. Part of it involved helping correct English of a few middle school aged students for a few days. I got a nice thank you note in English from one of the girls who I was teaching and helping. 5 years later, my sister joins a German exchange program through my school. We had a German girl living with us for a few weeks. While there, my mom decided to show her the box of stuff from my trip, including this letter. Apparently, this same girl was the one who wrote the letter. I suck at telling stories. When I was 15, I met a girl that was feeding the ducks in Audubon Park in New Orleans. She gave me her number, but I lost it the next day and never called her. About a month later, I went to London with my grandparents. I walk out onto our hotel room balcony the first morning we were there, look to my right, and she's standing on the balcony of the next room over. I scored. I once had a homeless guy ask me for a quarter. The next day, he did it again. You have made it until the end of this video. Now listen here, and listen here closely. Like and subscribe for more curated content from Mr. Adit Man. Thanks for watching.